being rich is equal to problems. So that must have been one of the things that I distinctly, even viscerally remember feeling about not being rich, and I started wanting to not have problems, so distinctly wanting to not be rich. Aggressiveness and ambition has been curtailed in the spiritual circles. Yeah, and also the other thing is there is like Tony Robbins. There are people who do spiritual things and they have a lot of money, but it hasn't seeped down. Do I feel guilty for charging for my spiritual gifts? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dear viewers and listeners. Welcome back to yet another episode of Beauty Lies Beyond podcast with Miriam Rose. Today I'm going to do a segment that I haven't done in a while. It's called In My Own Words. So I want to talk about money, spirituality, and limiting beliefs. When I woke up today, I was wondering what do I talk about, and I asked for a sign, and this is the sign that came. I need to talk about money because it's very emotive in my life, but also in the spiritual circles. We've had a lot of talk about the balancing act that is spirituality and money. Also materialism and spirituality, which is how it's put. And it's something that I've personally struggled with. So in my own words, let me share what I know about this topic. So how I'm going to do this is it's going to look like a Q&A. So I've looked at the top 20 most emotive questions about money, and that's how I'm going to answer from my own perspective. So stay tuned. So the first question: what did I learn about money growing up? I came from, by then, in the 90s, a well-to-do family. It was fine. And where we used to live, because we relocated, everyone had the same living standards. And money wasn't even discussed. So it wasn't an issue until we moved into my second childhood home. It was a bit in a rural setting. And it is around that time that I started noticing there were discrepancies. I was young, I must have been like 4. And I started noticing discrepancies or differences between me and my cousins. And that's when I think money started becoming something to think about. And I now started remembering, maybe I'm jumping the gun right now, but I remember discussions and statements that would be said about wealthy people or rich people. And that was disconcerting for me because up until then, I didn't know that there were differences. So call me naive, but that's how it was. So what were the first messages I had about money growing up? So now when we relocated, the statements I'm talking about were rich people have problems. They seem like they're rich, but they always have problems. I remember one distinct day we were walking with, I think my cousins or my friends, and there was this very well-to-do family across the fence. And one of the ladies pointed and said, no, those people, they look like they're rich on the outside, but inside there, if you go inside, you're going to find so many problems. And I'll never forget because it stayed ingrained in my mind and I was horrified. I'm like, oh my God, being rich is equal to problems. So that must have been one of the things that I distinctly, even viscerally remember feeling about not being rich. And I started wanting to not have problems. So distinctly wanting to not be rich. Another problem I mentioned the differences. So in the status, so when I went to school, I would notice some students, for example, didn't have shoes. And for me, that wasn't an issue. So that's when I started noticing, oh my God, I can afford shoes and I can afford socks, and there are people who can't afford it. And I remember asking one of the boys who was my friend, why do you come to school without shoes? And he said it was voluntary because it's easier for him to come to school, to run to school. I wasn't convinced, but I was like, oh, thank God. Because I was young, I was like, thank God, at least it's optional, it's voluntary. But the more we lived, the more the teachers kept mentioning it. Like one time, the teachers decided to check our feet, to check if they were clean. And and when we were in a queue and it was my turn and I had socks on, and I was really, really young. Right now it's different, but I was young. So the teacher was like, why can't you be like Rose? Her feet are so, because my feet were so smooth, very soft, like baby feet. And then she was scolding some other young lady who obviously didn't have shoes, so her feet were like as hard as mine are right now. But that time, for me, it was so weird because first I felt so heartbroken and I felt so bad. So I went home that day and I told my mom that we had to buy that lady shoes, first of all. And then I also remember feeling so bad that I felt bad about my feet, that I went outside and removed my shoes and started hitting my feet against the rocks because I wanted my feet to be as hard as hers, because that was my logic. I didn't like that she was suffering. This is something I've come to learn later, that it's a type of empathy, but it's not the healthy kind of empathy where I have to suffer because someone else is suffering. That's something I can discuss on another topic, but that was my logic. So I decided I'll make my feet as hard because why is it a source of shame for someone who is genuinely unable to afford shoes? So my point is the discrepancies and disparities started appearing, the cracks started appearing in my perfect picture around money. And it went on and on until I started hating being different, in the sense of having more ability than other people. I started hating it. So I started hating having money. I didn't like it. I hated it. I wanted to be that's the logic. I wanted to be as not well-to-do as other people because I wanted to be with them and condole with them. I hope you understand how it's coming out. And please remember, it's the logic of a 6-7-year-old. But I noticed that I carried it along. So, third question. So the one belief about money I have had to unlearn. So this continued until recently, because I honestly just had let's say a love-hate relationship with materiality. And now when I got into spirituality eventually, I started now hearing even more conversations about how God and money cannot coexist. And that I know most of you have heard. It's like God does not like... It's weird. It's weird, but those are things I had also growing up, that you need to be humble. That's what it used to be packaged as, humility. So be humble, don't have money, give away money, be like other people who don't. In fact, one of the things I remember now was the poorer you are, the more love you have. And I remember this also came from my parents, like my mom. She would indicate that people who are not, let's say who are, this is hard, who were, let's say, not well-to-do, were humbler. So for me, I look at that and I'm like, I want to be humble. So can I not have money then? So I would push it away subconsciously. I would push money away subconsciously because I wanted to become a good person. I wanted to become a kind person. I wanted to be a humble person. So those are things that I've also grown up with. And also another thing that would give me dissonance was, but I've also met people who are kind and loving, but they also have money. So imagine, I've grown up with a lot of dissonance. So the next question was, do I confuse humility with lack? Exactly. Like I said, I used to confuse humility with lack. I thought the more lacking you are, the more humble you are, and the more God loved you. Another thing I want to share is the first memory I have about money. But okay, so there's this memory I have where eventually, after we stopped being average or well-to-do, there were money fights at home. And this is around the time around the 2000s, like the new age after Moi left and everything was just everywhere. They started having like cracks, money problems, because we had to like move to private school, and I moved to private school and had to go to this high school and then uni, and all of it cost money. And that also made me feel like I was too much. I was a burden, which is also something I've come to learn, that it's an ingrained limiting belief that money can be, you can feel like a burden in relation to money, or I felt like a burden in relation to money, because I'm like, why are you paying all this money? Because it was a lot of money that I would use in my school fees. So for me, people spending money on me was not a good thing. I don't want you to spend money on me because I don't want to feel like a burden. So there's also that. And then the fights were over me, obviously, because I am going to these expensive schools and my parents are trying and I could see them trying. It was such a tumultuous time in regards to money for me, especially where I was concerned. So that's a memory. I also have it's a core memory of being a burden and being a bother when money is being spent on me. Oh, this feels like a therapy session, but I hope it helps someone. Where did the belief spiritual people shouldn't want money come from? Good question. I think it is the two things. One is what I said about godliness being close to poverty. Like God just seems to love poor people more or something. And rich people seem to have very, very bad behavior. So that's the other thing. Like the things we would watch, maybe even on TV, or the information that would be brought to us was people who are wealthy are corrupt, they've gotten the money illegally, and the people who are now nice people who have money are quiet. So they're not out there showing the rest of us that, no, you can have money and be a good person. You can be actual humility, because what I thought was humility is not humility. So I think this is why this conversation is important, because it depends on what we are being exposed to. What we have been exposed to is drug money, corruption money, people stealing. Like that's what money as energy has been connected to, and it's ingrained in us. The second one is spiritual people shouldn't want money. Is now, and finally I went into the spiritual communities. Still dissonance, because I see both cases, but I've met so many people, me included, who were spiritual and godly and shanti with no money. And it's this belief of very ungrounded belief that we need to just let it flow, or you go with the flow and stuff like that. But you're going with the flow and you're broke. And that's something even I ask all my guests, because I feel like we have that limitation. I think it's something, it's a core limiting belief in most of the people, where aggressiveness and ambition has been curtailed in the spiritual circles. Yeah. And also the other thing is there is like Tony Robbins, there are people who do spiritual things and they have a lot of money, but it hasn't seeped down. It feels like it's very it's not compartmentalized. It's all over the place. There's no one funnel where spirituality and money are together, if that even makes sense, for now. So everything is very, there's a word, disjointed. Spiritual people and money are disjointed for now. So you're either materialistic, or spiritual. So this is just something I witnessed in the communities. What emotions come up when I think about earning a lot of money? Okay, so I started off, I'm also an advocate of the High Court. I started off earning lots and lots of money when I was in my early 20s. But like the issues that I had already pointed out brought a limitation. But now, because I've healed a lot, I've done a lot of inner work, I realize that it doesn't make me a bad person, one. I can be both spiritual and godly too. Like material needs, money is a resource. Money is also energy. Money is neutral. 3, also I'm a soul. So I don't have to identify myself with money for. And being a soul, I can use money because I believe I'm a good person. And it said that money just amplifies who you are. So the more money I have, if I feel inclined to helping people, I need more money to be able to help people. In fact, I remember a pal of mine who passed on some time back, may his soul rest in peace, told me that. I was like, wait, but you want to help all these people, but you don't have money, you're broke. How do you want to help them? And at that point, I was struggling with that thing I mentioned of, I want to be here with them so that I can feel their pain. Then it hit me, no, that's crazy. Don't do that. Get lots and lots of money so that you can help the people, so that you can serve. So I have also learned 5 that you can't serve 2 masters. Don't serve money and God. Don't serve both. Make money your slave as a resource and serve God. So now I'm able to do both. And now, having worked so hard at this, I am happy to be abundant. When I think of a lot of money, there's a time I was feeling like throwing up. Just recently, before I started like this work, I could see, like, let's say I'm visualizing bags and bags of money, and I feel like off-put and throwing up and everything. So I had to look at the woundings that I'm talking about now. And then I worked on them. And now when I imagine myself being abundant or having lots and lots of money, I feel good because I am able to separate the dynamics. Is my income a reflection of my self-worth? So self-worth was also something I was struggling with. Remember when you feel like a burden? I didn't feel like I was worthy of being spent on or even having money or even being paid. Man, this story can go on and on and on. I'm trying to really shorten it. But I remember one time when I was earning an income, my boss was like, "Oh, come and tell me how much money you'd want to get a raise, a raise." So I remember I just went and told him, "No, you just look at my work and determine how much you will add." Now, later, I realized that was the wrong approach. But it's fine because at that point, I had self-worth issues, self-esteem issues, and I was relating. Remember, I'm connecting my self-worth and tying it to money because I think money is this big thing that is like an independent entity. I don't see it as neutral. I think it has power over me. I am feeling helpless. I'm feeling like a victim, all these things. So what has changed is I have realized I have the power and it is a resource, and I am supposed to use it to help me. So it's a resource. It's a neutral resource, and it depends on the energy that I have that I'm putting out there, and then it will come back to me. That is something that I have had to shift. And that now applies to whether I'm practicing law or I am healing people. I'm doing my energy healing work, regardless of what I'm doing, whether I'm visualizing abundance or calling it in. It's the same. For me, money has shifted. Where I'd placed it is not where I've placed it now. So I think that is something that people need to work on and shift. Do I feel guilty for charging for my spiritual gifts? Like I said, initially I was, until now I started noticing the pattern and started working on it. Initially I was, because I thought using my spiritual gifts, for me, I'm a healer, energy healer. I felt like I could help the whole world and I want to help everyone, and it's not that much. I just use my hands and heal. It's really not that serious, for me anyway. Then I realized that's the wrong approach, and I stopped feeling guilty, and I was able to charge. And now you pay the same way you'd pay for a contract if I draft it for you. So no guilt, no shame. Is stuff that I have eliminated from my consciousness as far as money is concerned. Can I serve deeply and still be wealthy is my point. Like, the whole point of being someone who is in service to humanity is having the resource to serve. So I will not be able to serve if I don't have the resource to serve. If we are both in a whole, nobody will be able to pull each other out, so the other out. So beats the purpose. It looks like it's logical, but it's not, because there's a lot of unlearning that I have had to do to get myself to raise my consciousness from the poverty consciousness. I had poverty consciousness. I had a scarcity mindset. So it's something that I've had to raise, because a poverty consciousness and a scarcity is like down in the scale. So I've had to raise my consciousness through my spiritual practices, through realizing that I am the soul. And now when I'm above it, I have a raised consciousness. I'm able now to serve and use money as a resource. Do I fear being judged if I become successful? No, now no. I wish I did this before because it feels like a different person I'm talking about. But yeah, initially I had issues with becoming successful. Why? Because I used to be the person who would judge successful people. I would judge rich people, wealthy people. So if you judge others, you also get judged. So in that respect, I didn't want to be successful because I didn't want to be judged, and I didn't want to be seen as a bother and all those labels that we had given rich, wealthy people. Now, no, because I realize the place of money in my life. What's one belief about money I would want anyone who listens to this to question? I think it's the place of money in life. Where is it placed in your life? Not what we've been told, because when we go to church, we are told this. When we go to the mosque, we are told this. When we go to the temple, we are told this. Like, for example, there is the point of you have to tithe. Tithe is a very emotive issue. We all know that. But if you know where the place of money is in your life, then you know why you tithe. Then you know why not to tithe. You know why not to donate. You know why to donate. Like, you need to reclaim your position in relative to money. So, question, where money is relative to you. What is the position of money relative to yourself? Maybe your self-worth, your self-esteem, but relative to who you are. And also, do you know who you really are? Because if you identify with your ego, then money can be your master. But if you identify with the soul, money is just a tool. If money had a voice, what would it say to spiritual people? It would just say, money is a form of abundance, and raising your consciousness as a spiritual person is raising your frequency. What did I say? Money is a form of abundance, and abundance is a high frequency. And what we do as spiritual people is strive to raise our consciousness and our frequency. So what money would say if it had a voice is, come find me up here. I think I did a part 2 because I've run out of time, but I feel like there are so many questions that I'd love to tackle around money. In fact, I hadn't realized this before I began, and I realized this is actually so much. There's so much to talk about money and spirituality, and I feel it in my soul to talk about it. So you'll allow me to keep this short for now. If you have any questions, please ask. If you have stories to share, please feel free to do that. And maybe I'll answer like 2 more questions and prep for a part 2, because I think I want to handle this in like a series. Yeah, this is something very important. Is financial struggle always a lesson? Such things. They're very deep. Financial struggle is always a lesson. I think so. I think everything in life is always a lesson. I've faced so much financial struggle, man. Hadi at some point, this is actually what prompted me to do my inner work, because it's like, something needs to give. I'm tired. There's nothing I don't have. I have a brain that works. I have everything working for me. Why is money not working for me? So that's when I called myself to a meeting, and I was like, no, something needs to give. I need to sit down with myself and check these limiting beliefs that I'm talking about. What's the problem? And I think that's the lesson that I learned. So the lesson that I've been learning has been the separation, again, the placement of money relative to me, relative to my self-esteem, relative to my self-worth. Money as a resource, not a master. Money as a slave, not a master. Where the place of God is, the place of abundance, the place of me as a soul, the distinction between me and ego, me as a soul and my ego. Acknowledgement that the ego is equally important, because the ego is what makes me want to pursue money, want to have ambition. You see, there's all these things, but I had to put them in a chart and place them where they needed to be placed, because one thing I've learned is not to ignore any of them, because that's the other thing I was doing. I would just push away one and be like, ego versus soul, or slave resource versus, that compartmentalization and disjointed way of living is is a no-no. So now I've accepted everything, integrated everything, and now I'm placing everything where it's supposed to be. In fact, I guess I want to end it here and say that is the one lesson that financial struggle has brought to me. And I would love to be, if nothing else, I'd love to be a spiritual person who's like a flag bearer of money. I want to be a rich spiritual person. I want to be that person who, or wealthy, rich spiritual person, abundant spiritual person. I want to be that person, the poster child for you can be spiritual and also be wealthy, for people who are in the hole that I used to be in. I want to be that person who they look at and be like, yeah, but she's able to, she has both, or she has it all. Yeah, I want to have it all. So I want to end here, but I want to end with a prayer. If you've watched all the way to the end, I'd like you to use this prayer. It's called the I am the soul. It's an affirmation. Why it's important is it's one of the ways that I can teach that has helped me detach myself from the ego, respecting the place of the ego, like I mentioned, but also acknowledging myself as a soul with the ability to have and coexist in a material world. I am the soul. It is taught by Master Chua Kok Sui of the Pranic Healing School, which is a school that I have been advocating for. I think there's so much to learn. This is the book, Achieving Oneness with the Higher Soul, where we've been taught that we are a soul that has incarnated here. There is a higher soul, etc. If you want to learn more, I'll put the link in the description. So this is the prayer. I am that I am. I am not the body. I am not the emotions. I am not the thoughts. I'm not the mind. The mind is only a subtle instrument of the soul. I am the soul. I am a spiritual being of divine intelligence, divine love, divine power. I am one with the higher soul. I am that I am. I am one with the divine spark. I am a child of God. I am connected with God. I am one with God. I am one with all. Thank you for listening. If you have questions, please do not hesitate to ask. And I hope to see you again in the next Beauty Lies Beyond episodes. Until then, stay blessed. Goodbye.